Okay, welcome to the Scenery Farm. This is me clamping the roto lock or coffin lock jig in place, and you can see it's got three holes and a line up the center. One hole is 3/8, the other two holes are 17/64. The 3/8 hole, which is the center one, is for the male coffin lock or roto lock. I'm just gonna choose one and move on from here with the rest of my life. And you can see a center line in the jig there, and that lines up with the center line that I've marked on the sheet. I arbitrarily chose 200 mil in from the end of the sheet, which is going to be less than that for the side pieces. And this is me, it's exciting. I'm drilling a 3/8 hole, and then I do two 17/64 hole, which is a smidge over 1/4 inch for the 1/4 20 stove bolts that I'm putting in, which are basically flush head bolts with a number 3 Robbie head in them, or square head, and then I move on, and look at this. This is professional. There's a little weak camera move there. You can't hear the tripod or see the tripod jiggling on the ground at all. And then put that in place. I use these Bessie F clamps over the quick grip clamp, simply because the quick grip, I mean, they have a place in the world. I use them later on the build, but I want a little bit more grab power with them. And this jig is made out of, I think it's 1/4x3 plate, P&O, so it's got a bit of a pretty shiny look to it. But I could have used hot rolled, it doesn't really matter. And then I clear coated it after I scribed it. It's basically a sandwich of plywood that I clamp on the end there. And this is the other side of the sheet, and if you take my word for it, I finished those two. And you can see just on the top right of the camera there's the female jig that has only 2 bolts in it. It also has a center line. And this is me not drawing my line long enough so it can be seen in the hole, and that's what I do. I line up that line with the center line through that center hole. I could also do it off the top of the jig because that's just square and accurate up top there. And I use the steel because it won't wear out. The bottom plate there is, you can see it's a different kind of plywood. It's just a piece of poplar. Most of the time when I use this jig, I'm using it on the same 18 mil birch, so the poplar, which is the bottom piece, is not glued in place, it's screwed in place, so once I've done 5 million holes through it, I can replace that bottom plate. And yep, I think I've stretched this out as far as I can. So I've just finished double checking the sheet is oriented the right way, because I don't want to put the holes in the wrong face, and this is me putting my 200 mil mark in there for the jig for the female side of the coffin locks, and the line I mark isn't long enough to see to the edge of the jig. The edge of the jig is where the mark is on this one. There's no center hole to get it closer to the edge. So then I chuck the jig on there, and I clamp it in place, and then I drill those holes, and I think I'll just show that the line isn't long enough, and then I go to my holes and make the line, or go to my sheet or the edge and make it long enough, and then clamp it in place. Yep, could have brought that with me. And then clamp that in with the old Bessie, and drill the holes. Yep, I think you can take for granted that I do all 4 edges, all 4 of those on the 2 edges. So I'm going to take an 1/8 inch router bit and round over the edges of this. I mean, I do it because it's easier to handle. I do it so the wood won't chip long term. I could break the edges, but an 1/8 inch round over is a rather small thing, and it just makes it that much easier when handling this if you're going to put it together, take it apart. And again, when you're putting your router bits in, don't bottom them right out. You can push them in so it touches the bottom of the collet base. Well, actually, the bit. You know what I mean. And then pull it back out a wee bit, because when you tighten down the collet, it actually seizes in towards the router, and that can actually bottom out the router bit, and then when you're tightening it, you're actually sliding down the bit as you do it, which can wear away the bit and cause you long term not to have a bit that fits properly in the collet. And I never really trust, even though I eyeballed it and sighted it down, I never really trusted on the material until I give it a test. So take a sacrificial piece of wood, give it a bit, make sure you haven't gone too deep or not deep enough, and move on to the top. So here's the top, very exciting. You see I do a bit of a climb cut right at the end there. I find that if I go right round the corner and try and catch the corner, and I'm not moving the router at speed along the edge, that I pop away from the wood a little and leave a divot, and I have to come back anyways. And sometimes if I'm having an even worse day, I can tip the router while I'm moving that slowly, and then it dives in an unnatural way, because you're right on the corner, and the corner can pop up into the actual bit further than the line, or the edge, away from the corner. So that's what I end up doing. So I end up doing all 4 edges. Once the top and bottom edge have been rounded over, this is a countersink bit. Well, it does exactly what it says. It's a countersink bit. This one happens to be the exact same diameter as the 1/4 20 bolts I'm using, and I'm not pushing super hard. It may look like I'm being somewhat deliberate and pushing hard down there because it's not sharp. It's fairly sharp. I control the pressure down on it so that I just know how deep I have to go with it, so that I have the stove bolt that goes in there nice and flush with the top of the wood at the end. And this is me just adding one more process before I take it off the bench. I just wanted to show you the countersink. I just touch on the top of the sheet. I just touch the 3/8 hole, so it has a bit of a micro bevel around it. And then for the other holes, I go the full depth, and so you can see I just touch it. I just don't want, as the Allen key goes in and out, to have the wood chip away. It'll wear away, over time, because the Allen key, there's some play in there, and I did a fairly tight hole. But yeah, I think it's an important touch. I'd like to thank you for coming, and we'll see you in the next video.